coming from the backwoods of New Jersey. Welcome to the Jersey Guys Music Podcast, where we feature in-depth music discussions and interviews with special guests from the worlds of hard rock, heavy metal, and AOR music. So settle in and crank it up. Now, here are your hosts, the Jersey Guys themselves, Tom and Mark.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Jersey Guys podcast. I'm Mark Ballo here with my co-host Tom Coyne, and we've got very special guest today, Kevin Chalfant. You guys know him probably from The Storm, amongst a million other things. We're going to touch on all that stuff tonight, but Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Great, appreciate it. I figured, and one of the things I just said a little bit ago before we started talking was we do like to kind of cover everybody's career when we get them on here. So we're not going to talk about one thing and go on to and that's it. We're gonna cover it all tonight. So let's start with that. Let's talk about the band 707. Probably, I guess, the first kind of maybe major band that you were in.
First label band, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it kind of goes back to, I don't want to say when I was 3, but a little bit after that. George Tutko was a dear friend of mine, lifelong friend. He was from my hometown. And George was a recording engineer, producer, and, did pretty good for himself. Moved in the 70s out to Los Angeles and helped build a few studios, but Cherokee Studios mainly, and worked with a bunch of different people. I just remember him calling me when they were working on Journey, on the first Journey record. He was a second engineer on the first Journey record. He's like, dude, you got a twin brother out here. I'm like, what? Yeah, there's this guy out here, Steve Perry. Yeah. Could be your twin. I mean, I knew George since we played baseball on the baseball diamond together, played in bands together. So what happened was I was working with this same band here in Illinois. I live in Illinois again. I did move to California to join 707, but I'm back in Illinois, and so I called George before I moved to California, actually, and said, hey, George, on his answering machine, if you hear any of you really good bands looking for a lead singer, let me know, right? He calls me back the next day. He says, dude, you are not going to believe this. And I said, what's that? He said, you left me a message looking for a band, and another guy, you're both names Kevin, looking for one another on my answering machine. Kevin Russell called George, said, hey, we're looking for a singer. If you know of any really great singers, hook us up. So all he did was just put us together, and it just worked out great, So that was a local connection to my childhood. And so that's what made it feel real comfortable for me,
Now, at that point, you came into 707. They had already done 2 albums, right? So
right.
You came in as kind of like, was it? I was reading up some stuff, and I guess it was kind of was it the management or something that kind of said, hey, we want to get like one voice for the band, because at that point, Kevin Russell and other guys in the band were all singing lead, right?
Well, there was a big shakeup, and which I never had really anything to do with any of that. I was like the new guy. I was just doing what I do, and I don't know if there were problems in the group. I don't know. I mean, that's the crapshoot of joining a band. You kind of get what's in front of you. And the management, I guess, took the chance, the opportunity to just maybe push the reset button. And because we made the record with Phil Bryant playing bass, and he was, him and Duke were the original singers, Duke and Phil, the bass player. So like if you hear I Could Be Good For You, both of those guys sang on that song, lead at different times. So Phil left the band. I don't know if he quit or if he got fired. I don't know any of that. They never even told me any of that. And really, I had enough to do just to do my own, trying to, somehow fit my voice into that mold, And so it turns out that they brought in Felix Robinson, who was an Angel.
Yeah.
At one point, I guess, and Felix did the touring with us. It was, I just say, I just put everything I had into it, as far as writing, I don't know. Kevin and Todd and Jimmy mainly did most of the writing, but being the new guy, maybe some of the stuff came out in a rehearsal and some of it could have been mine, but that's not what my focus was at that time. My focus was just get in there and, put what I do on that record. So anyway, it all worked out, and we did the one record and we did the one tour. And while we were touring with REO and some others, doing some big shows, man. We did a lot of these big like super jams where there were like 10 bands. And that was really going really well. And then Neil Bogart, who was the president of the record label, Boardwalk, passed away. And his family, his wife just said, look, we're gonna sell the company. We're all the tour support went away, so that we kind of ended that whole thing, So, just the politics of this and that. I was sort of on the fringe, and I was just looking to survive, man. I had a family, so I was just looking, okay, well, if this is not going to happen, where am I going next? So we were still working on writing songs and whatnot, but all of a sudden we didn't have a label.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes it tough. You make different kinds of decisions then,
Right.
So I was jobbing around doing stuff with different bands and, meeting people and writing songs and just doing gigs on the West Coast. And the funniest thing about it was I spent most of my life touring all over the Midwest. And as soon as I joined that band, I finally got my family out there. I had like 2 kids at the time and my wife. We moved everybody out there, and like within 2 weeks we were back in the Midwest touring. So I was right back where I started. My wife's like, I could have just stayed at home, So that's just the way it is. You do what you got to do, and I'm glad I made the change at that time, because a lot of really good things happened for me and my family. So here we are talking, right?
Right, exactly. Well, after, like I said, it didn't last too long. You did the one album, Megaforce, of course, and then you were on, after that kind of dissolved and went away, you hooked up with the band Steel Breeze, right? And you did an album, I guess it was 1984?
I want to say it was maybe 82, 83.
83, I think it was.
83, yeah.
Okay.
I actually got a call to do background vocals on the record. They were making a record with the original singer. And so I went over to Fantasy Records. I was probably going back and forth, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 days, putting all the background vocals on. And then the following week, I get a call from a couple of the guys in the band, and they're like, hey, you did such a great job. Our singer, he sounds horrible over the top of you.
I bet.
I mean, that's what the excuse they gave me. They said, oh man, it's like it's night and day, And I said, so what do you want to do? Erase my vocals? And they're like, well, no, we don't want to erase your vocals, but we want you to come and do the lead vocals. And they brought Alex Lidgertwood in from Santana to do backgrounds behind me.
Mm.
And and we did a couple of movie soundtracks out of that. I got more involved in the writing with that band. They were at least open to some writing, but the other band, I mean, the 707, they probably would have been more open, but it was almost like it was Shotgun Wedding. They had sent some roughs to the record label. They liked the new singer. They wanted to move, and it was like a shotgun wedding. They just said, we're taking, let's just do this. We need to hurry up because the summer's coming, and that's just the way it all went down. But Steel Breeze was fun. It was I can remember making the long drive to Sacramento. And I swear, I tell my wife, I said, there were angels in that car with me or riding on the hood or something, because I remember just getting on 101 and I'd be driving, and I don't even remember driving after a certain point. And then it would be, oh, here's my turn. Mm-hmm. I know I was sleeping the whole way.
So this was basically the second band you came into. That this is my own personal opinion, that were early upstart AOR, early 80s AOR bands before the term AOR became even like hip.
Right.
Both of them were good bands. Steel Breeze had some element of success.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, the vocals on both of those bands were okay. So you kind of came in and gave, like, in my opinion, a jumpstart vocally to both. I think those two albums are what kind of put you on the map where people started paying attention to your voice.
Yeah, I would say. Well, really up until then, I was, just touring around with a Midwestern band, and we didn't have a record deal. We had songs and that we had written and people knew them, but we didn't really have any records, that were well produced, I would say, I guess.
Now, was Steel Breeze something you saw yourself continuing on, or you kind of looked at it at the time as basically a stepping stone?
Again, I will just say this: when a singer joins a band, I don't know how to put it. Unless you guys were ever singers joining a band, it's
certainly not.
Okay. Well, it's like everybody in the band, I mean, they're happy to have you there, but they don't want you getting too good.
Right.
Nobody wants to be upstaged by the new guy. And so it's always it's like walking on crackers. I don't want to break any crackers,
Right.
And, it was like, but at the same time, I was on a mission to get where I'm going. And I, as much as I loved the guys, they were really attached to the life they had before success, because they could go make a living at it, So some of the stuff that they chose to perform and this and that, I'm trying to say, look, if I'm going to spend time here, I really want to ratchet down on where we're going. I don't want to, this isn't just about surviving. It's about, let's make the plan to go forward and make some history.
To make an impact.
Our hit. So, when you're doing that kind of stuff, it's like I was never really the leader in any band I was in, but there were times when I had to take the lead, just as like at my band in Illinois, for instance. I don't necessarily think I was the leader, but I was one of the guys that was getting the gigs, trying to help design the sound or make plans to get to take the band to the next level, probably because I had more mouths to feed than they did, and it was, I'm either going to do it here or I got to go somewhere else and do it. It wasn't like, it was a great band. Everywhere I go, it was a great band. So, and I have a call in, but let me just fix this.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. I got to send somebody a message. It's John Elefante. You want me to tell him
I'd like him to be our next guest. Tell him I'm going to call him.
John's a great guy. I've got shows with him this weekend out in Southern California.
Oh, wow.
But I don't know. I guess what I was saying is that when you're trying to make a way for yourself, you have to have the people around you in the same plan.
Yeah.
And when you join a band of already existing members, they don't like to be told what to do, and especially maybe the singer who's already maybe the focal point of the band, and out of nowhere they had success, and now there's this new guy, and so
must be Elefante again.
Ollie Palmer, I've just got a show with him tomorrow, so I got to him too.
That's great. Couldn't be interrupted by a better group of guys.
I guess Steve Walsh will be next.
Now, if you hear me say Jimmy Page is calling,
you could hang up on us. We won't be insulted.
Don't worry, it's not going to happen. But if it did, I would apologize and call you back.
We would understand.
So anyway, I had kind of met a few people in the, when I was working with 707, Jonathan Cain happened to be in the studio with Keith Olsen, and at the time his then wife, Tani, was making a record, and John was working on the songs and probably co-producing with Keith Olsen. And we had the opportunity to go in the studio with Keith for like a couple days. So he produced Megaforce, and John just happened to be in there, and we had already cut the track. And the next day when we came in, John said, "Hey, I want you to hear what I did on the beginning of this song." And he played this really great like intro and stuff on the song. So John and I kind of hit it off. He was the first guy I really met in Journey. And so I said, we're because I knew that the 707 guys were living in Marin County. We were working with Keith in Los Angeles. And so I said, "Oh, you live up there?" He goes, yeah, I'm living up in Novato. It's a little bitty town. It's north of San Francisco. He says, "That's where you really want to be." So that's where I went. First place I went, I set my family up in Novato. So meeting John was a really good thing, because, he was my first, outside of 707, he was the first musician that like I got to communicate with, and we had a good friendship and all that kind of thing. And eventually, as time went on, while I'm trying to work with all these different bands, I had gotten calls from all these friends, engineers and producers, and guys that I had written songs with, that I was writing songs with, were also engineering records. And so I got a call to come in and sing on, whose record was that? I'll think of it. Great guitar player. I know you know him. I'm just trying to remember his name right now. I wasn't prepared for that part, but I went in to do background vocals, and Greg Rowley was there doing backgrounds with me. And I'm like, this is crazy. This was crazy. So I'm hearing our voices blend, and I'm like, these background vocals, I'm in my head, I'm going, this sounds just like Perry and Rowley. In my head, I'm thinking this. he had to be thinking the same thing because, you know, our voices, it was a blend that I had heard before. And I think those guys that were recording, oh God, I'm trying to think of his name, man. It's like tough. I'll think of it though.
Yeah.
Because he's all over, you know, like we still stay in touch, and I think he lives in Europe now. But so shortly after that, I met Ross Valerie. And I met Ross through the original engineer who recorded the demos of Journey. And at that time, it was called the Golden Gate Rhythm Section. They weren't even Journey yet, right? And you know, little by little, I kind of started forming a band with Ross and Prairie Prince and Steph Burns. And Steph, you know, he was with
Y&T and Huey Lewis and the News.
Yeah, Alice Cooper. He was, you know, he was just a fantastic. He still is fantastic. He's actually coming into his own. He's, in my opinion, my humble opinion, if there was anybody close to what Jeff Beck did, it's Steph Burns. You know, he's got sort of that same kind of fluid rigidity that Beck had. It was you know, it's rhythmic, but it's smooth and just really, really good.
Yeah.
Tim Gorman was a keyboard player in The View. That was the band.
Yeah, I was going to say that's The View is what that turned into, right?
Right. It turned into The View, right? And so Steve Jarvis was actually the guy that did the initial recordings of Journey, and he recorded that View record. And you know, we ended up working with all kinds of different engineers. Wally Buck, who was did a lot of engineering with Journey. And you know, it just seemed like it kept falling natural progressions, and you know, it wasn't by accident, because the whole time, man, I'm praying and I'm going to get a break here and get a break there. And you know what, man, I mean, I believe that's really what made the difference in my life is, you know, a lot of guys thought it was all on them. And I'm like, I'm not strong enough to, you know, to do this on my own. So, you know, my family, we prayed together on this stuff. And you know what? I just continue to this day to see doors fly open that I could never have opened on my own, you know? So, and I'm still hanging in there. I'm still singing pretty decent. I probably can't, you know, sing like the dog whistle I did back in 7. That was some high stuff, man. That was some super high stuff, but it got me to the point where, you know, I think when I started working with Greg Rowley, Greg was a really good coach for me because, you know, he was always the leader of the band, you know, whatever band he was in. He was a leader in Santana. When Journey started, he was a leader in Journey. He stayed as being the leader for a long time. And then there was probably a rub between him and Steve wanted to go in one direction and he was trying to, that was never told to me. I'm just saying that's that lead singeritis, you know, when the guy comes in. And so I respected Greg. I still do. I respected his sensibilities about songwriting, and he'd worked with some of the greatest singers on the planet. And as him being one, he would tell me, just take the tune home and see where it takes you. And I would. I had a little Fostex 4-track cassette deck. That's what I was using. But the cool thing about those is, you know what? You didn't have a million tracks. So every line counted. I would take turns on going back and forth on 2 tracks, just getting that thing the way it should be. And I think the first 2 songs we wrote were I've Got a Lot to Learn About Love and Show Me the Way, which really were our first 2 singles.
Yeah. Well, that was For the Storm, of course, which happened, I guess, in your order of your career and how things went. The View kind of was around ended around 1989-ish, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it was still kind of happening while Greg and I were writing,
Okay.
you know, uh, and they were shopping the View, and I think the View could have been something really, really great. It was really a great band, a really fun band to play in, and Herbie had a good time working with us on that. Uh, but again, that leadership role, Greg was a natural leader, and we the way we got sucked in together, Herbie kept inviting to yeah, Wally keeps trying to call me, man. I'm telling you. Well, we're going to share a cab ride when I land in Nashville. So
Oh, okay.
that's what he's called. But I know. But
So I wanted to ask you one question about the View.
okay.
Was it something that was officially signed and shelved, or it really never was signed and was just kind of hanging out there?
Yeah, no, we had that one record completed, and there were a lot of people looking at it. But what was happening? People wanted the songs for other artists, because from a record company standpoint, this is a complete startup. But if we took these songs and put them in with these bands that we've already dumped gazillion dollars in, we could have hit songs. So off of that record, Cher cut "Who You Gonna Believe." That was one of the tracks, and Starship cut "Keys to the City," and the Cher cut of "Who You Gonna Believe" came out the same time as the first Storm record. In fact, that's a whole nother story. Ran into her while we were mixing the first Storm record, and she was mixing that record, which I think was called what was the name of that record? Love Hurts or something. Anyway,
Yeah.
we talked a little bit, and she was very complimentary. I tried to sing it just like you, and I'm like, that's funny because hearing Cher copy Kevin Chalfant,
Yeah.
boy, the female version, huh?
Yeah.
But it came out really good, and she was really high on the song because, this is all past history and everything. But her and Sonny were in this big, I don't want to say pissing match, but that's kind of what it was. He had written a book about, how everything about Sonny and Cher was because of him, and she was out basically wanting to defend herself as being a talented artist. So the song "Who You Gonna Believe," she said, that's the perfect theme for what I need right now. And so it didn't become a big single, but my kids called her Aunt Cher after that.
Wow. I was a big fan of those late 80s Cher albums, Heart of Stone and stuff like that. I love
Yeah.
those albums.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, and I want to say that Toto played most of the tracks on most of those records. It wasn't lightweight stuff, man. She was getting her feet dug in,
Yeah. So that brings us up to after the View kind of fades away, I guess. You and Greg kind of continue on into what became the Storm, right?
Well, again, we kind of got sucked into this because Herbie would Herbie was always working on stuff. I got to tell you, the smartest guy and the most creative guy, even above any of the artists that I've ever worked with, Herbie Herbert was the smartest guy in the music business that I've ever, and he was so kind to let me come and spend 2 or 3 days at a time just sitting there, chopping wood basically with him about what to do in the business and whatnot. He opened his home to me, and he helped me become a leader, where I was, I don't know, maybe not confident enough to be a leader of a band or whatever. He was trying to tell me, look, you have to not be afraid. That's the first thing. Don't be afraid to take the steps that you need to take, and Herbie was the one that engineered inviting me to go to the 49er games and sit in the owner's box with him. I mean, who's going to say no to going and sitting in the DeBartolo owner's box, right? So I'm like, yeah, and there's Greg again. And so then he even had Steve Raleigh, Greg's older brother, invited to sit in the box with us. Well, little did we know at that time that they were all working together to get Greg and I to work together. Yeah. And it was like we had already met one another, and that may have been even engineered by Herbie. I haven't drilled down quite that far yet. But we had sung together, and here we keep running into one another. And it was Steve Raleigh that would say things like, hey, you guys ought to get together and write some songs. And Greg would always go, he'd look at me and go, yeah, we could try that sometime. So then the next week we'd be sitting in the owner's box again. Hey, did you guys write any songs together in it yet? Or, no, not yet. We'll get to it. After like the third or fourth week, Steve Raleigh says the kind of stuff that big brothers do to little brothers to motivate them. He said, oh, yeah, okay, well, that's a good idea. Well, maybe you should start a band and call it the Procrastinators. Oh, man, Monday morning, Raleigh calls me up and says, you better get over here because I'm not going to another football game without a couple of songs.
That's great.
So that's when we wrote I've Got a Lot to Learn About Love and Show Me the Way. And it's funny that the way all of that even happened was the first thing we sat down, we had no idea what we were going to write, what direction we going. I started out with, do you have any song ideas that you might remember that you maybe presented to Steve Perry that he just thought didn't see it, he didn't hear it? He goes, yeah, I got a couple, and I want to say he started playing the chords to Show Me the Way, which would have been a gigantic hit song for Journey, I want to say.
Absolutely.
And he started playing those chord changes, and it was like it just fell out. I didn't even know what I was saying. The one thing that I felt really comfortable with Greg, because when he's writing, he'll just start singing, and later on I discovered that's what the Beatles did. They just sang whatever came out of their mouths. None of it made any sense. It was just an expression of sounds to go along with melody, and that's what we started out with. And I think Show Me the Way was the first song we actually played around with a little bit. And then, we would break for lunch. By the way, I don't know if he'd want me to share this, but I'm going to share it anyway. Because our favorite lunch together was pork and beans and hot dogs together, okay? And that made our afternoons very short. That's all I can say. But the afternoon sessions didn't last as long as the morning.
That's great.
So, a lot to learn about love. I remember I took that one home, and it probably took me, I don't know, the way my family, I had two boys. I want to say maybe my oldest son might have been 13, and my youngest son was 9 or 10 at the time. And I would go out in the garage, and I just had a little studio set up in the garage, and they'd be in the house watching TV or whatever. And I'd say, hey, you guys, come on out here. And so they'd come out, listen to something, and they'd kind of look at each other, and then they'd look at me. Nah, that ain't it. So I'd just go back out there, and I finally got on to the melody that I wanted. And then all of a sudden I thought, wow, I've got a lot to learn about love. It was a line that came in my head, and it just started. Once I hit that line, and I didn't really have a lot of other stuff, I said, come out and hear this chorus and tell me what you think about this one. And they were like, oh, that's it. That was it. Oh, I knew that was it then, So the next day when I went to Greg's, he was like, man, dude, that's strong. Let's start with that one. So that's actually the first song that we finished together. And And I said, well, Greg, the one thing that I think the Journey fans loved and appreciated is how you and Steve would trade off. Why don't we trade lines off on this one? Kind of like that, because I think that's very reminiscent of the early Journey.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Your early Journey fans might
That
really,
I missed a lot when it left. I really did.
Yeah, and honestly, at that time, we weren't thinking about having a band. I mean, we both were thinking we're probably too old to start a band, at that time. And really, we weren't. But for the business of the 20-year-olds, we were. So the songs became more important than is it about you or me. It was like, let's just think about the songs. And I like that idea. So as we were writing the song, the lines, he was like, let me have that line and you take that line. And then I'll come back on this one. And we were like trading off. And wow, I really felt like, we probably could have made 5 more. In fact, our record deal, I think with Interscope, the way it went down, it was 8 records deep.
Oh, wow.
And, again, politics got into the whole mix, and it didn't work out, but, that I probably had the most fun writing with Greg. That first record was probably the most fun I've ever had writing on a record, because first of all, I had a lot of respect for the guy and his success, and we just became really good friends. And my wife just reminded me the other day he's in Texas now, and I don't really get to see him anymore. Very seldom do we talk, or maybe an email or something like that. And she said to me, my wife said to me, gosh, don't you remember how much we would laugh with Greg and Lori? And I'm like, God, we belly laughed together. We'd go out to dinner and we would just sit there and be crying in the booth. People would be looking at us, because it was like we really had a good time together. I miss that. I really miss it.
That's a great part of friendship.
It's probably the emotions of that could write another Storm record if somebody just would come up with the right amount of money.
Yeah,
because after you tour with Ringo Starr in the Ringo's All-Stars, making another Storm record, there would have to be like a boatload of money in it.
Yeah.
I think, to have him focus on that. But good times, and we had some really good times. So.
Now I have to ask you a question. I asked Josh Ramos the same question too. The first Storm record, in my opinion, almost a perfect album, except for In the Raw. How did that, now see if your answer matches his. It probably will, as to how that got on the album and ended up as a video. It was a perfect AOR album, except for that song, which in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, was a clunker, or at the very least didn't fit the album. How did that come about?
It got a lot of play in strip bars.
Well, that's what he said too. That's exactly.
a lot of airplay in strip bars.
Yes.
Not that that's what we were looking for.
Right.
But it's just funny. I think that we probably would have made a lot more money if we would have called Billy Gibbons with that one.
And to put it as like the 3rd track of that was my other complaint.
Well,
if you put it as a bonus track or the 12th track, but to put it as the 3rd track in between all those monumental AOR songs.
You know what, though? Honestly, it's a mixed bag there, because I can't tell you how many people have written and say, here's my top 3 songs. And they'd like Can't Live Without Love, which really was a deep cut. And if that record would have just kept releasing singles, I think that song probably was a sleeper in a lot of people's eyes. I can tell you what, that song, I'm pretty sure that was the only song on the record that I sang straight through without stopping. Where you sing through, you did almost, let me get this line, let me get that line, that kind of thing. And excuse me, I think that may have been the only song. I don't know. It might have been that one. It could have been Show Me the Way. My memory is not what it used to be, but one of those, it was kind of funny because I did it really early in the morning. I want to say it was like 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and singers don't wake up. Their voices don't wake up until, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. But I was really in good shape, and, I was a young buck, so to speak. And I remember I got there early and Bo Hill and Jimmy, they were like, man, I wish you guys were ready to go. And I don't even think Greg was there yet. But my oldest son, I let him come in with one of his friends. And both of those guys ended up being radio guys, by the way. Son's on Lightning 100 in Tennessee, the morning guy. And his friend John, I think, was a morning guy down in somewhere in Miami. It might have been Tampa. Both those guys ended up being radio guys, but they always loved to tell the story how I think it may have been Show Me the Way that I sang all the way through. I think it was. And my son witnessed it. And that might have been the reason why I got through it in one take. Like when you got somebody in the room that you're trying to leave a lifelong memory with, he was the one, he's got it. And I got through the end, and Bo was like, he stood up, he said, dude, it was Show Me the Way. That's the take. And I'm like, are you sure? I've never done that before. I said, give me one more. And after I probably got through the first chorus, I was so out of wind from singing it the first time and then hitting this halfway through I said, you know what? I think you're right. And by then I saw Greg standing behind him with a cup of coffee. And Bo goes, well, you're done with this one. Let's get Greg in there. And I just saw Greg put his head up. Like he hasn't even had a cup of coffee yet. And we were walking, there's like a kind of an in-between room between the big room and the control room, like a containment area. And we kind of crossed past one. I just remember him walking by me and dropping an F-bomb on me, as he had to go in there and follow that, I've never done it before. So
when you were cutting that record, did you realize the impact? Because at the time it was 91, scene was starting to change a little bit, but for that time it made a big impact upon the melodic, hard rock community. Did you know that you had something special, or you just? We kind of did know we had something. All we were really praying for at that time was that, again, without getting into politics, Bo was one of the kind of executive vice presidents, and so was Jimmy Hoyson, and we just are not Jimmy Hoyson, but Jimmy. Oh my God, here I am struggling to think of Jimmy. Who was the other executive vice president? Biggest producer in the business. Sorry, I had Jimmy Hoyson on my brain because he was the. Golly, he's retired now. Terrible. I'm not senile, but yeah, listen, we both have the same problem. I'm very close in age to you, so I relate, believe me.
But as long as there was going to be harmony between these two guys, and eventually it got to a place where somebody had to be in charge, because if you recall, Ted Field started that label, and Ted had to kind of pull out of the label because of personal things and, divorce and I don't know, get all that stuff. And then it ended up being Jimmy that took over the company. But I think that's why we just kind of became secondary, because Bo was no longer in the company, and why extend this out, if he wasn't the producer. But everybody tries to say, well, because of the Seattle sound and all that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's totally true, because it's still, that record still holds water today. Quality of the recordings, I don't know. In the raw, it's funny. Every time I listen to it, I do laugh out loud. I laugh out loud because I don't know. I just remember some of the old guys in my hometown that played in bands. They would say to me like, hey, how to make sure that you're successful? You got to make them laugh and you got to make them cry. So maybe that was, we got to make them laugh. I don't know. But I mean, Greg took it on, man. He just took it on full on. I thought he delivered the tune. It's just that maybe it should have been later in the record. I don't know.
Well, I think the only reason he did it was you got to give Josh a little vocal thing where he did that little in the raw part, right, in the deep voice.
Yeah.
Right?
He's very proud of that.
It was our rock and roll four tops. He had that low voice. We can't waste that thing. Yeah. We got to use it.
We did it on the second album with Living It Up, right? Living
It Up. Yeah, we did. And that was the tongue in cheek about both of those songs is, and I will tell you, this is another little story, because we eventually started touring with Peter Frampton. Mm-hmm. And we had done a lot of shows with Peter. We were playing, again, becomes a family when you're on the road with them. And his lifetime roadie, the guy that's been with him forever, a British cat, and I don't recall his name right now, but Josh's voice on that song live was actually pre-recorded and on a click, because our drummer wanted to play to a click. So we put off the record Josh's voice, because if the sound man didn't get that voice up or had something muted, and Josh that's the only time he would sing. Yeah. He'd walk up and say, in the raw. So we could crank it up and have it big in front. Peter's roadie came up. We had just walked up and they started the soundtrack to You Keep Me Waiting. That was our opening song. And he walked up and Josh had his back. He was like looking at his amp, just checking something. And he walked up to Josh's mic, up to the mic stand, and he had taken a frozen foot-long hot dog out of the freezer and he had shoved it in the mic stand. And we looked over there, he's going like this, and he points at this hot dog. And I got to tell you, Josh was the only guy that didn't know about it. And so we're all like, I mean, I couldn't even catch my breath. And Ross, he was standing behind his mic and had tears rolling down his face. And Josh he's checking his zipper. He's wiping. He didn't know what everybody was laughing at. He thought, oh my God, what is wrong? Would you tell me what's going on? I could see it written all over his face, right? And we started, ooh, you keep me waiting. And I look, and I'm just barely getting it out. And I look at Ross. He's not singing. He's just standing behind the mic crying.
That's great.
And we were in somewhere in Iowa, I think, right below Minnesota. I mean, somewhere where it was so hot on that stage. It was like 110 degrees on that stage. And at every song that went by, the hot dog was just getting a little
more limp.
A little more limp, right? So now it's about like this, right? And when In the Raw shows up, Josh walks up to sing In the Raw, and it was his moment. Right? And he walks up and grabs this limp hot dog and pushes it up like this to sing in it, and it went right back.
That's great.
I mean, he was so ticked off.
I bet.
And he yells at that roadie to get that hot dog out of there. You know, so animated, Josh. And
He spoiled his moment in the sun.
he had the mic in his back pocket. He walks out, he grabs the hot dog, and he goes, and he takes a bite out of the hot dog and then shoves the mic in the mic. And Josh is just, but Josh played his rear end off that show, man. He was so mad from that.
He didn't tell us that story when we had him on.
No,
You left that one out.
those, but I can't show on the first show. I got to come back, you know.
So tell us a little bit about the second Storm album, which was also something that ended up being, I guess, shelved. It was recorded and came out after the fact.
I think that was when the kind of the hammer came down and Bo left Interscope. And I don't know, maybe this was their opportunity to, you know, they started pushing a lot of cop killer rap type stuff, you know, and it wasn't about rock bands anymore. It was more about that street thing.
Yeah.
And so it was maybe the lawyers had found a way to get us out of an 8-album deal, you know. Hey, I mean, I think we would have probably stayed on the label if they would have just made the date, pushed it back a little bit, but they never gave us a date of release. So, you know, I mean, management just is like, well, you know, this looks like the end. How long do you guys want to hold on, or do you want to just take the records, ask for a release? And ultimately, that's kind of what we ended up choosing to do. And eventually that second record came out on, I think, first on Music for Nations in
Yes,
in the UK.
Crescendo, was it? Or was it in the US?
It was Music for Nations, but but I don't know. It did come out on other labels.
Crescendo, yeah, it was.
Yeah. And it was. It
Because
came out.
it's funny that Tom and I we talk about this back and forth, and we talk about those two Storm albums, and he's a fan of the first album probably more than the second, and I'm the opposite. I'm the fan of the second album, Eye of the Storm, more than the first. Not that we don't love, you know, we both love each one, but I mean, Tom, I think I was just saying, I think because he saw you guys in 1991 opening for Bryan Adams, and so maybe that's what he takes away.
So I say thank you, and I apologize. Being as sick as a dog, yeah, I wanted to tell you this, man. Before that show, I pulled Greg aside, and I'm like, Greg, I don't know how bad you are, but it just hurt to talk. You know, like it just hurt to talk. And every doctor that I'd ever had, voice doctor, they'd say, when you're in that bad of shape, man, you can cause permanent damage. Shouldn't be singing like that. And I said, man, is there any way we can call it tonight? And he's like, oh, no, man. We're here. It's happening.
This was the Nassau Coliseum show.
Yes, the infamous Nassau Coliseum show that I had second row seats to see. And I'll be honest with you. I was lukewarm on going to that show. I was a big Bryan Adams fan, but me and my ex-wife at the time, we just had an infant, and it was very hard to get out of the house and get a babysitter. And my friend had a ticket machine in his record store, and he saw that you guys were opening, and he called me up and he said, do you know the Storm is opening for Bryan Adams? And I said, I got to go. I'll find a way to go. And that's how we got my mother at the time to babysit my 33-year-old daughter at now. And we went to that show. And when you came out, like as soon as you start, because I remember telling my ex-wife, where do you hear this guy sing? You could, because she liked Journey, but she'd have no idea who you guys were. And I was like, where do you, this band is like, you know, there's Journey members, the singer sounds like Perry. It's going to be phenomenal. And you came out and he started singing, and I said, oh boy.
Let me tell you, I did everything that I could do to not sing that night. And Greg said, look, just, I had taken Greg into another room, and the dressing room was basically a series of rooms, and he pulled everybody together and he said, look, it's too late to cancel the show. Obviously, Kevin isn't going to be 100% of what he is. But basically, we're going to do whatever you tell us to do, Kevin. And I had everybody there, and they're like, hey, man, whatever you say. And I'm like, well, I said, here, all I would ask you to do is on the verses, bring it down till you could hear a pin drop. And when we hit them choruses, everybody sing along, because I don't know what is going to come out of my mouth. I'm trying to warm up. I had nothing. And basically, I was trying to just talk my way through the verses, you know. I mean, this is in my brain. I recall that's the show I'll never forget, because it was a bittersweet. And you know, and everybody did step up and sing whatever they could sing. I said, just even if you sing the melody down lower, just sing it. And by the end of that show, I had at least warmed up my pipes a bit. And you probably never saw how many times I had to run off the stage and cough my lungs out, and literally cough my lungs out. And it you know, as the show progressed, it got a little better. And at the end, you know, I just said, when them choruses come in, just, man, use the Marshalls and just fill up the sound. And so I really felt like I owed you guys another show, but we never did come back.
No, the gig was still good. And like we talked about off the air before we went on, it went down really well. I mean, the band was on fire, and it was, for me, it was still a thrill to see you and the whole band.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. One more.
It's Jimmy Page, right?
It's Josh Ramos.
No, that's actually one promoters to work with. I just have to tell her, because she's been in meetings all day. And so we had a little bump in the road, and I need to talk to her, but I'll call her when I get done. No, you know, it ended up, we did so many, you know, we did the encores, and I was like, oh my gosh, how are we getting called back out there? And when I literally, when I walked off that stage, I was wringing wet. I wasn't 100%, but I gave everything I had that night. And I walked off the stage, and I walked right into that dressing room ahead of the band. And I just went into the furthest room and was bawling my eyes out like a little baby, man. I just felt like, you know, that's not how I want to present myself. You don't work that hard and then, you know, have that happen, you know. And Greg came in, and he just turned me around, he gave me a big hug, and he says, dude, you got balls of brass, dude.
Absolutely.
You pulled it off. I didn't think it would end that way, but man, tomorrow we're going to get shots. Tonight is over with. Let's just forget about it. It is what it is. It was what it was, and we're done. You know, and you pulled through. So that's what a good leader does. That's how I learned to be a good band leader. Is, you know, it's not always going to be perfect. Give it 100%. You know, sometimes I have my own band aside from the Voices of Rock Radio. I love working with the voice. Someday we're going to come out there and do a show with you guys.
Well, you do kind of owe me one, so.
I knew I shouldn't have said that. But yeah, you know, I just remember those things in my mind, and you know, when I would be standing side stage, and I can see the band, you know, the drummers nervous and the guitar players, warming up his fan. Hey, you guys, come on in. All right. Now there's a lot of people that came a long way to see us tonight. So just try not to suck. That's my favorite line.
Try not to suck too bad.
Suck, okay. And then we go up on the stage laughing and looking all relaxed, and it was good,
Yeah.
So
Now I have a question I wanted to ask you, going back to the gig at the Nassau Coliseum. I know myself, when I feel like what you had, you're kind of in a state where you don't want to be bothered. You want to be left alone. Everything annoys you. How do you get, is it an adrenaline thing? Is it like, how do you go before 20,000 people feeling like absolute dog shit and still have the confidence to say somehow, what's the mental preparation for that?
Did I say anything about the way I felt that night? Do you remember me saying anything about the way I felt?
You did. That's how, you did. You did apologize that yes.
Normally what I would say is like what I just said to you. I'd say, look, I want to apologize. I caught a bug. I'm not 100%, but I'm going to give you 100% of what I have. And that's my attitude, is that, I remember when I was, before I was in the storm, I went to see Foreigner. And I just remember, no, I take that back. That was afterwards. So that didn't apply for this, but I just remember, I remember Lou Gramm, they were singing, when Lou would go up and sing, I've been waiting for a girl like you, he'd be singing down here. And I was at the Cow Palace. That's how long ago it was. I don't think it's even there anymore. And this chick was in front of us, leaning against this rail, just swooning. I don't think I told Lou this story. So this is probably, if he pays attention to your show, he's going to go, oh, he said that? No. But I remember this girl swooning, and I could tell Lou was having, something was going on, kind of like what happened to me at Nassau. And instead of going up into the high voice when he knew he wouldn't have it, because it was almost like falsetto, he took it down. I've been waiting. And this chick was like, she came out of a trance and said, sing it right, you son of a bitch, And I'm like, holy crap. I'm never singing something on a record that I can't pull off live. That was like, I was sitting in that seat to hear that message.
Right.
And there were some nights on the road that, when you're in your prime and you're putting it out there, you have to give everything you got. When you're making a record, it's one song at a time. But when you stack all them songs up back to back, man, it's like you got to be on your game, And there were some nights going through my head, I could have probably sang this a half step lower. Well, we should have dropped this song down a whole step. You live and you learn, But I just will say that Nassau, when you mentioned that you were at that show, I was like, okay, I'm doing this one. I turn a lot of them down, but that I got to apologize to this guy. But no, it turned out okay at the end of the night.
It was fine. It really was. I mean, I would tell you if it was otherwise. And I was not the only one. There were a lot of people there that were there to see the storm.
Yeah. And I will tell you that John and I did some shows with Lou Gramm with his solo band, and the guitar player at the time came up to me and said, hey, I was at that show, Nassau, and dude, I was like, wow. And there was a drummer, and I want to say it might've been the same, the drummer who just passed away was in a band called Get the Lead Out. Which is a Led
Zeppelin cover band. Yeah.
Yeah. And Adam was, I think, at that show, So as time has gone on, the show that I felt like the worst about seems to be the show that I have people coming up and saying, that was a great show. Everybody knew you weren't 100%, but dude, you did not throw down your towel, man. You didn't throw in the towel. You just kept going. And eventually at the end of the night, hopefully there was enough boxes checked to have it go, yeah, they passed the 51.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Mark, you know.
Absolutely. And the band was really on fire. They played.
Well, the band, that band, I'll tell you what, man, you should have seen the LA show when we played at the Forum. The following night, we were at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. But man, that LA Forum show, there wasn't a note that came into my head that I couldn't hit. I thought, well, usually I go to this note. I'm going to go to that note and then end on the regular note. And they all came out. And it couldn't have been better because everybody that was anybody in the business was at that show. And
yeah, it was like a super group. It really was. You know, at that time, for people that were into AOR and melodic rock, it was looked at as like a super group.
It should have kept going.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
Because look what happened. I mean, and you know, in some ways, I will say that, you know, it's a little disappointing, but, and I know Josh, every time I talk to Josh, it's like, I can't get on the phone with Josh unless I have at least 30 minutes to listen to him complain about the storm should have been huge. Okay. So I really have to like, can I really talk to him today? I'll call you tomorrow, you know?
Yeah. Because
Josh it really hit him hard, really, really hard, you know? But you know, he's had some good things come his way. You know, he's made some good records on his own, and we've done, you know, you know, stuff together that I always try to include him and stuff, but you know, I mean, I still have to do what I got to do. In fact, I kind of laid the making records aside, you know, because live performance, how many years do you have to really do it in this genre of music, you know? And making records in today, I mean, look at what Kiss has done. I think Gene Simmons pretty much summed it up when he said, hey, we're selling to Kiss Publishing because there's never going to be another Beatles and there'll never be another Kiss because there's not an industry anymore.
Unfortunately, very true.
Yeah. So I said, well, if he says it, I already felt that way prior, because the only game in town is, you know, we'll give you this, you know, few shekels of silver to make us a record that we will own, and we own it around the world, and you'll never see another dime. And it's like, what's in it for me? You know? There's nothing in it for my family. So why go through the effort unless it's just to put records aside and save them for the future? I don't know. I just, that's not what motivates me in music. What motivates me in music is like now at this point is to be able to go out in all the bands that I used to compete with, all the singers I competed with for airtime on the radio, you know, the ones that I knew then and all of the new people that I've met all through time. I just, you know, John and I put a band together. I actually have this band called the Voices of Rock Radio. And I started it kind of at the same time Jimmy Jamison, Alex Lidgett Wood. I'd met, you know, those two guys. Derek St. Holmes, I toured with 707 with Ted Nugent. So I knew Derek, and I would just call on him. Hey, you want to do some shows, you know? And we would go out and do shows under the Voices of Rock Radio. Well, Jimmy passed away, and he was kind of the guy I did all my shows with, most of them. And then John Elefante and I started talking by phone for probably 2 years. And we ended up both being hired by another band to go out and just perform as sit-in artists and stuff, ringers, and we just hit it off. So I said, well, that's a guy I could work with, on every single show. And it's really been beneficial for both of us, because with the people he knew and the people I knew, and we kind of merged bands, and it's been really good, so we're doing a lot of shows together. I at one point, we were talking to some folks on the East Coast about doing a run of dates, and that kind of fell through because it was right before COVID.
Nah.
And a lot of people basically went out of business during COVID. They're just trying to get their promoting back up and running again. So even now, 3-4 years later, it's been hard. A lot of people that I knew went out of business.
COVID annihilated the club scene and the bar scene and and on the East Coast and the New York City, right. New Jersey. It annihilated to the point that we were at a point we didn't think it would ever come back. That's how annihilated it was.
I know. And so what we did is we did a lot of corporate work. We did a lot of corporate parties, and we literally, because John's, being involved in Christian music for a lot of years, there were organizations that put on fundraisers for different, we're going to raise money to build houses, homes for the homeless. These people are going to feed the hungry. These people are trying to, save babies from being aborted. These people are, and they were like all these really good causes. And we worked with a few vendors that just said, man, this is perfect for what we need. And we'd go in there, multiple singers, put on a great show, and sometimes an hour show, but they would call us back every year. So that got us kind of up and running. And now we're starting to do more ticketed events and stuff like that, festivals. But I'd love to, maybe you can private message me some friends that are promoters if they're still in the business. I'd love to come out.
Well, things have bounced back. I mean, I'd say they're pretty close to what they were pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Now, but it took 4 years, 3 years, for that to take shape.
A lot of guys have merged businesses, kind of working together, to get shows up and running. And then once things started picking up, they'd go back working their own shows. But a lot of, I know one friend of ours that we did a show up in Sturgis, and we couldn't get anybody to provide us with backline anywhere in that whole region, Minneapolis, nobody, because it was actually during I want to say it was during the middle of COVID. We have a friend that drove all the way from Tampa. He brought a big truckload of equipment all the way up to South Dakota. Gravy Williams is his name, and Backline Superstars is his company. He drove all the way up there by himself and with his dog, his bulldog, or not a bulldog, I'm sorry, it was a pit bull. And they came up there, him and Lucy, and we did our show. And man, I'll tell you, whenever we go to Florida, he's always our first call, because you don't go out of your way to help people like that. And he was going out of business. He said, I probably lost $3 million. I had to lay everybody off. He sold most of his equipment until things started recovering. He kept just enough to stay in business. And again, if somebody wanted a certain keyboard, he'd have to call a friend who had one and basically, sub it out to pull off shows and stuff. And now they're all booming again, and which is really great.
Well, thank God. Yeah.
But this business is all about networking and building friendships and lifelong friendships.
Sure.
Man. So,
I actually got to see you in 2007 at the Melodic Rock Fest that Andrew McNeese pulled off there in Indiana. Oh, yeah. I took a picture backstage. It was probably the three of the greatest singers. It was yourself, Jolyn Turner, and
Jimmy
Jamison. And it was,
yeah, you took that picture?
Yeah, I took that picture.
Oh, dude, that's a great picture. That's a wonderful picture, man. When that pops up on my timeline, it's like, oh my gosh, that right there. Boom. That's a picture of three tenors right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Three of the best U.S. singers ever.
Oh man, I wish we could have done a record like that together. Like, are you kidding me? Like that would be the new Three Dog Night right there.
Oh,
Woo!
yeah. Yep.
Man.
Yeah, no, that was a great show.
And Joe Lynn Turner panned out. I have one little Joe Lynn Turner, and I had hired him and Derek St. Holmes to do. This was 2008 when the crash came, and we were going to do New Year's Eve at a big hotel up in the city, Chicago, and they canceled. The show, and because everybody was tanking, everybody was scared to death about taking and spending a dime, and so I had to call those guys, and say, well, it's been canceled. I did take a deposit, so I'm gonna send you your full amount. And Joe was really sweet about it, and so we're sitting there talking, and I told him, I said, God, I think Janie Lane died. Kevin DeBro died. All these singers were dying right at this time. Right. And I told Joe, I said, I came into a rehearsal with my band and I was like, God, all these singers are dying. And I said to my band, I said, if these guys don't quit dying, I might just by default become the best rock and roll singer alive. And Joe Lynn Turner says, hey, I ain't dead yet, MF. Like, I'm still standing in your way, bitch.
Well, Joe's still going strong. He put out the heaviest album he's ever done in his career a year ago.
He landed. He finally just found his own thing. He's not running from who he is. He's head on in perfect timing. I mean, it would have been great if he'd landed that maybe 10 years ago, but you know something? Right. It took his health.
Right.
I think he had a mild heart attack.
He did, yeah.
And he just said, you know what, dude, I'm just going to be me. Because how much time do I have left to be me, And yeah, it was, man, I just always worried about him wrapping that white snake around his neck, man.
We thought it was for the longest time that it was a plastic snake, and we were laughing about it. Me and my friends would say, "What the hell has Joe Lynn Turner got a plastic snake around his neck?"
No, dude.
And then we found out it's a real snake.
Yeah,
and we had like a whole different, he could have whole different look about it now.
And it was still been squeezing his neck. I'm like, what in the world possessed you to wrap that size of a snake around you?
I know.
Nope. Sorry, guys. You're not going to see me doing that.
Well, you know why he's still standing? He's a Jersey guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
he is a Jersey guy. Yeah.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
So we spoke a lot about Josh Ramos, and the two of you got into a project together called Two Fires.
Right.
That was a Frontiers project. You did 3 albums. If you could tell us a little bit about how that came about and that experience.
Well, Josh kept saying things to me like, man, God, I just wish we could still be making records together. I used to get calls on my landline at home from Frontiers in the middle of the night, because it would be in the middle of the night. And they're just getting, sipping their coffee in the morning. It got to a point where my wife was like, dude, if this is going to continue, you're going to have to take that phone off the hook.
Right.
But they kept asking me, and I literally was the first American artist that signed to that label. And, this was before, I think once some of the record labels in America started losing their traction, I think all of the lawyers started looking for a new place to go and get paid. And what the lawyers in this business do is find ways to save the company money so that they can get paid more. So what started, like when I just moved to California, it was the very tail end of the artist having control of their product. There was very few people that still had that. And Herbie was one of the guys that would be like, there's no way we're making records for you. We're making records for us, and you're either on board or we'll go to the next place. You know, that's how Herbie said it. So that way we, you know, we design our careers. You don't design them for us, because then we're enholden to you for everything. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So they treated me good, you know, in the beginning. And then as time progressed, the more you do, the less you see. Mm. More work you do for less money. You know, it got to be where I, you know, at one point, I think the last record I made with them, I got a call from one of the guys in the company saying, hey, you know, you got to make a phone call. And I'm like, to who? Well, this guy has this, one of these torrent free, you know, download sites, and he's your new record. My new record, it's not even mixed. I know the rough mixes you sent. I'm like, well, there's only one way they would have gotten those. Right. So while I'm sending rough mixes, they're sending them to all these labels all over the world to try to license it out to all these other places. And all somebody has to do is say, well, I'll give you $2,000. No, that ain't enough. Guess what? It just went to a torrent site.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh, we're well aware of that type of thing.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Well, I took money out of my own pocket to finish these records, you know, and now it's already out for free or not free download. But what I found out from the guy, I called the guy and he picked up the phone, and I said, you know, I'm an artist and you have some of my new product that's previously unreleased. Well, I didn't upload it. I'm like, well, who does? Who did? Well, one of our clients or something. So here's what he did. I said, tell me how it works with you. Well, people pay $30 a year and they can download whatever. They called it file sharing. They never called it music. They call it file sharing. They can download as many of these files that they want because it's all in a digital form. And I said, okay. So basically, what are you? Oh, well, we're just the vehicle that they use in order to download these shit. I said, okay, you want to know how I beat you in court? And he says, yeah. I said, well, Your Honor, you see, my music is just like a bank. That's how I pay my bills. That's how I feed my family. That's how I keep a roof over my head. And though this man never physically robbed the bank, in his own words, he drove the vehicle. So he's driving the getaway car. And all of these people are stealing my product. That's when I decided I'm now a live singer from now on. Because when I do a show, I'm paid. And you know what? If somebody doesn't like that, he's not going to be at my show anyway.
That's right.
You know, people who really want to sponsor, because that's really comes down to, like my wife, she will not allow me to say the word fan. Somebody might say, I'm a big fan of yours. I'm going to say, if you bought my records, my wife would call you a supporter. You're a supporter of my art. So those who don't come to my shows and just download my stuff for free, you're not a supporter. Sure. You're a fan. But I'm not getting the cool air from the fan. It's blowing on you. You're sucking all the air away from me, and you're blowing it on yourself. So I don't know how harsh that sounds or whatever. And I don't.
No, we get it. We're two guys that to this day, we buy strictly physical product. As you could see, all my CDs of everything you've done are lined up here, including Japanese presses to get the bonus track.
But yeah,
We're old school. We buy physical product. We
those are the people that watch and listen to what you're saying.
Right.
I get that.
Exactly.
But that's what we do this show for. People that
Yeah.
are really into the music.
And listen, let me tell you something. I'm not even preaching to the choir. I mean, it's like I just said it's my choice. And, I could have probably gone and done a GoFundMe and all that kind of stuff. But, when the real earth, resets and all this bullshit that's going on right now on the planet is finally gone, I just got a feeling that things will be whole again. And then people will be able to do things like they used to do. And I don't mean that in a political way or anything. I just there's a spirit about the earth right now that is not friendly.
No, it's not.
No.
It's not friendly at all. And it doesn't feel love. I don't feel the love, everywhere. I mean, I feel love, but I don't feel the love like I used to. And so I feel like the old saying of don't cast your pearls with the swine kind of thing. I don't mean to be, I don't mean it like people are swine. That's not what I mean. What I mean is I'll keep my pearls in a box at home. And when I feel like, people, it's an equal transfer of, people, just let me say this. We'll go back to the Nassau Coliseum for a minute. Because as I was singing and I knew that I was sucking really bad, I just said, look, they're showing love. You guys show love. And then it makes me want to show more love back. So as that show progressed, you guys gave me the energy I needed, and whether you came to see me or came to see Bryan Adams, it didn't matter. I knew for me, I had to make sure that the majority of everybody, because everybody's not going to like what I do. I mean, that's just the way it is, because not every time I go to a concert, I might really like the opening act and I'm like, the headliner didn't do that much for me, but I really like that. If that's what I could leave in somebody's mind, that's what I'm going to work for. So, and I'm still doing it. And, I'm not a young puppy anymore, but you know what? I'm just going out there and I'm giving it everything I got, and we're having fun, man. We're having a lot of fun. I got a really great band. So I know that there'll be people that watch your show, your podcast that might want to reach out. And I would love, I know what you're going to next. Okay, good.
Well, I'm saving there's one album in particular I want to talk to you about a lot, and I'm saving it to the end because it's my particular favorite album that you were on.
Okay.
So I'm going to save a little bit of wind for me.
Okay, buddy.
I'm going to move to the Shooting Star album that you were on called Circles.
Yep.
Which, as a little bit of a preference, I'm a huge Shooting Star fan. And the original singer, Gary West, was one of my favorites. And this album you did with them, I thought was one of your best vocal performances. And I would rate it as one of my one or two favorite Shooting Star albums. For a longtime fan, that says a lot. So if you could tell me how you got involved with them and the whole process of this magnificent record that you put out with them.
Well, I'll tell you, there was just a small organization called the Rainbow Foundation, worked out of the Chicago area. And they did a lot of charitable work. If they saw a family that a child had cancer or, whatever, that kind of situation, they would get John or Jim Peterick, myself, Don Barnes, Kelly Kagi, whoever was available to do it. Everybody would come in and we'd do a show together, and the proceeds from that would go to help this family. And they'd get maybe some sponsors to pay for our travel or hotels or whatever. Well, it so happened that some friends of mine that I went, through high school with, a young lady actually went all the way through elementary school and high school with. She was a year or two younger than me. Her son got this really rare form of cancer, and his name was Raleigh Crouch, and young man was pretty young, and so I asked John, "Would you help me? I just want to honor these people and try to help them," and so Don Barnes, Jim Peterick, Kelly Kagi, and Van McLean, who I had never met before, was on this show. And so we did this show together, and I really liked Van. And I thought, what a heck of a good guitar player. Didn't know really, I didn't know a lot about Shooting Star. I mean, I'd heard some stuff on the radio, but I didn't really know him. I didn't. And I told him that. I said, I mean, I don't know, you guys could be huge. And I just don't know. I'm not familiar because I was too busy doing my own thing, And so anyway, come to find out, he called me up one day. This was after we had done this concert. And he said, hey, I just have to ask you, I got this deal, and it was with Frontiers. And he said, our singer just kind of decided he didn't want to do it anymore, or whatever, whatever the reason was. And I pretty much almost got the whole record written, and I've got the guitars, and I've got this and that. And I just want to see, would you be interested in singing lead on it? And I said, well, can you send me something to listen to? He said, I'm driving to your studio tomorrow, and I'm going to bring it there, and we're going to plug it right in your computer, and you can listen to I'm going to give you the master. I said, well, you make sure that you're bringing me a copy. Don't be bringing me no master. I don't want your master if it's the only copy. No, I'm going to copy it, and I'll bring you a hard drive or whatever. I'm okay. So he brought me the masters, and then we he had kind of some stuff sketched out that he liked, and he had lyric sheets. And he says, dude, I've listened to the stuff you've done. You've got free artistic license. Keep what you want. I kind of happen to like some of these chorus ideas, but if you can build off of that and expand on it, you go for it, man. And then he said, I got a couple of tracks where I just got sketchy stuff, so there's some stuff that I kind of collaborated with him on, some of it that he just needed somebody to sing it. And I said, you know what? All right, good. Yeah, let's do it. So I actually recorded my vocals right where I'm standing. I'm in my studio now. So, and this is how I did it. I just put it in, came down here, had the lyric sheet, listened to the tune, listened to his melody. I'd shut him off, and I'm kind of like, can I remember that melody without it playing in my ear? So I'd play it, kind of sing along with it a little bit, and then I'd shut it off. And I'm like, does that melody stick with me? And if it did, then I'd have that in my head, and I'd be kind of piecing that melody along with not always the same phrasing. I'm like, I still got to kind of put me in it. So I just started making little rough, here's my first verse, and here's my chorus. And I'd send him an MP3. What do you think? Dude, I just get a word back. Caps, dude.
I bet. Now you got to remember, their original singer, Gary West, was also a guy that was compared to Perry. He had a very Steve Perry-esque type of voice. And then he quit the music business, and they had a guy for a number of years that had more of like a deeper, raspy, a bluesy voice that I never really thought fit their band. So when he stumbled upon you, he must have felt he had, gold.
Well, you know what? Like I said before, things don't happen by accident, man. It's like people come in and out of your life, and just like I did a show with Jim Peterick, Alan Parsons was on one show. Pretty soon I'm filling in doing shows with Alan Parsons. It was like 2003 or something. And he said, dude, I just need somebody to fill this gap, like 6, 7, 8 shows. because I have two lead singers and they're both touring somewhere else right now, and I don't want to turn down that money. I'm like, okay, so it's like, who wouldn't want to sing with Alan Parsons?
Of course.
Yeah.
So I've had my whole life has been, I tell people, I'm like the Forrest Gump of rock and roll. I have fallen into so many things that I didn't even think I would, and it's just like, okay, you just got to roll with it,
So this was not something that you or them perceived to be like a long-term thing? Were you like a hired gun or a band member per se?
I told him, I said, look, I'll help you do the record if it makes sense, if to go beyond that, because if you remember the storyline, I did the record. Okay. And again, it gets into politics and business and all that kind of stuff, but we kind of settled on a little bit of an arrangement, and after I finished the record and turned everything in, things started changing. It changed from what I started to where we were, so that it would be beneficial. Like if I give you a break here, then I'll make it up here. And then that didn't happen. Again, it's really nobody's business but ours, but I'll just tell you that it changed. The things changed. And I didn't want to like start playing like I had to make things up with him or he had to make things up with me. It was like all of a sudden something changed. And then Ronnie Platt came in and he did the shows with them, because I had a lot of things going on. But I said, if it's beneficial, I'm not a member of your band. I'm not a copyright owner, a trademark owner in your band. I don't, I told you going into this thing, I would help you make the record, but I don't know if I can do the dates. If you can make it up to me for what I'm giving you a break on here to help you, I'll make up for it on the backside. Okay. So that's as far as I'll go with that. But that didn't sit well with some of the bandmates. And I said, well, that's what we agreed upon. So I'm glad I could help you. And I wish you the best, and then Ronnie jumped in, and then Ronnie did shows with Kansas, and see how that works out.
Yeah. Because with that album Circles, he had Van had brought back some of the original guys back into the fold.
Yeah.
There were like 3 original members.
Right.
Or maybe even, LaFoon had been there a long time, but it was 3 original members.
Right.
And that they had that young kid who played great violin on the album.
Yeah.
That kid was killer. Oh my God.
Great. And I probably would have maybe, done a run or two with them, but, I'm like my dad told me growing, I'm a bit just a hardcore Midwesterner. And that is sometimes you can work with a handshake. I felt like this was, if a man is only as good as his word. And I'm not here to say that Van wasn't a man of his word, but in order to keep the band going forward, and it didn't sit well with the other members, and I'm not a member.
Right.
I'm the singer that happened to fill in a blank, joining a band again. And you don't have any negotiating point. So I said, well, I love you. I wish you the best. And, and I learned more about Van after doing that record with him. I started looking at, some of the earlier work, like some of the records he played on as a session guy. Did you ever do a deep dive on
Yeah,
Van?
no, he had been around, well-traveled, even outside of.
That's why I trusted his word, but then other people were like, well, then I'm not doing it, like it wasn't a big gigantic, they don't get paid like enormous amounts of money or anything.
Right.
And I don't live there. They live there. So there's a lot of my time involved in traveling to do a show. And I just had to keep my focus on where I'm going.
Well,
Now,
that band never was big, big. They were kind of a regional band. They had certain spots in the country they were big, and they had certain spots in the country nobody knew who the hell they were.
but the thing now, knowing a little bit more, see, Van made a lot of money building custom homes. He had a company that built custom homes.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was in a niche where everybody that came into the Kansas City Chiefs or the Royals, he would build them houses. He was making all the money he needed.
Okay.
So he didn't have, he made records, and it was, I don't want to say it was his hobby. He put a lot of love into them, but that's not where he counted on his money coming from. See? And so because that was the case, I couldn't count on that being where the money was coming.
Yeah.
And again, I'm no disrespect to anybody. It's just that I got to keep my ship moving through the water where I can stay in the business, and make it a lucrative business. So, I don't mean to disrespect anybody. I had a good time, and they're very cordial to me still. If something pops up, or T-shirts, or I could have worn my my shooting star hat, which is a really popular hat. They go, you are a shooting star. I'm like, nah, it's a band. Never mind, you wouldn't understand.
Right.
But
what's your feeling about that album when you look back to it? Are you as are you as big on it as, say, I am as a fan? Was it something you look back and say that was a hell of an album?
I still put it on and I listen to it and I go, wow, this is a grown up album, man. This is I finally got to sing lower register, still hitting the notes, but not up there all the time, where I got a lot of tone in my voice. And as I've aged, the rasp in my voice, is a tool if I'm able to use it. So even now I change and play some of my other songs that I've recorded where I was just screaming at the top of my lungs, and I've changed the keys to where I can use tone rather than just all night making people's ears hurt, and the sound man has to keep squashing me in a compressor, so that he can get it in the mix. It's like I learned all that once I got into my studio and I became the engineer. It's like, okay, now I get it, what they're always saying. Hey, the guitar players want to play everything as open as they can because that's why their guitars sound so good, right? The guitars sound really great when they're playing open chords. But in order for a guitar player to play an open chord, that means the singer's got to be singing from the treetops starting out, right? Did a show with Rick Emmett a number of years ago, and something he said, because he can still sing like a bird, man.
Yeah, I know. He's still good.
He sings like a bird. He just, he was a professor in a university. He finally retired from teaching, music theory and all that stuff. And I've been trying to get him to come out and do some shows with us, but he's like enjoying the grandbabies, and he's been, he's successfully beat some health issues and stuff. And now he's just enjoying his life. Right. But something he said, which really stuck with my mind, is like all that Triumph stuff that was just, such an effort to sing.
I bet.
He said live when he's playing, he's tuning his guitar and he's talking. He's like, now if I could go back in time and talk to my stupid 20-something-year-old self, I'd say, stupid 20-year-old self, why are you singing in the trees? Someday you're going to be a 70-something idiot still doing it, wondering why you're still doing it when, you were singing out of your range then. And man, brought me right back to Lou Gramm. And I love Lou. love him. I encourage him to stay in the game because people love him. Again, another one of them situations, he may not be 100% to where he always was, but I guarantee you the emotional and the sound and that heartstrings, he gives 110% of himself. Always has.
Well, the thing with Rick Emmett back then, he was a very unassuming sex symbol.
Yeah.
Women went nuts for him. And he was a very unassuming guy. He didn't try to put that out there.
Yeah.
But that voice, when he hit those highs, the chicks used to just go berserk for him. And he had that long reddish blonde hair. And
same with John Schlitt. John Schlitt, I used to open up shows for Head East all the time. And I just had a little bar band here in Illinois. And
that's who he started with, right? Head East was his first band?
Head East was, well, that was his first record deal. I think Flat as a Pancake or something. And they had, they actually recorded Since You've Been Gone before.
Yes.
Rainbow, I think it was, or was it Deep Purple? I can't even remember. But
Rainbow.
And the other one was Never Been Any Reason. And oh my gosh, I just remember the Barbie Bentons of the Midwest, which was nowhere for that guy, right? They'd be just and they're like, now he's a Christian music,
right?
Been married forever, right? And I always kid him, and I said, dude, and I look around at all the singers, and I said, you know what, dude? I remember being that 18, 19-year-old kid on the side of the stage going, oh, these women are just going nuts for this guy. And they're the cream of the crop. And he'd like, oh, man, that was a long time ago, man. He's always playing it down.
Right.
I'm like, dude, and he still can just sing his butt off. But, that Rick Emmett was, Triumph was big.
Yeah.
But Triumph wasn't Rush big, but they had all the, I don't know what the difference was. Maybe management or, I don't know, but they really should have never quit playing. Something happened. I don't know what it was. Maybe he felt like, I'm just tired of singing up here in the trees. I don't know, being the only guy, 3-piece band,
Yeah.
Well, I think, we didn't have any of the members on, but we did a long discussion type of show about them, me and Mark. Their management was forcing the drummer kind of to the side.
Oh.
And that's where it started. They really didn't want, and it was kind of like a battle as to who was going to sing the songs. Two guys that always got along went out, butting heads with the managements involved. And
terrible, see?
Yeah. And that kind of is what sunk it.
Stay in your own lane.
Right. And then he ended up leaving and did the one album without him. But that, it was ship had sailed. But if you look back on him, he is arguably the most all-around talented guy of that entire scene. You look at songwriting, singing, guitar playing.
Oh, the guitar playing?
Phenomenal.
Oh, drop dead. Just some of the, almost like flamingo.
Yes.
Type. And he would put that into that rock and roll stuff that was almost like, who does that? Oh yeah. Rick
Even
Emmett.
the guitars he used, were not jazz guitars in
Yes.
hard rock, but he made them sound good.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. He carved his own path.
Absolutely.
And man.
Stage presence, the look. If you take his whole package, you'd be very hard to find somebody that was more talented in that whole era.
You just, I wish I could just cut this little snippet and send it to him and see, I told you, man, you're a rock star, dude.
Or at least maybe he'll come on the podcast if he sees that.
Well, that could be. And tell him to call me, will you?
You got a better chance of getting through to him than me, believe me. You'd be surprised how many guys avoid me.
Well, I don't, and you're out there supporting people in this business, and as I'm looking out at the landscape, it's not like it used to be. So performing arts, theaters, and stuff like that, I think maybe that's where I'm going to be probably, and I'll be that old codger singing. I don't know. I don't want to stick a fork in me just yet. I'm not done, but
No, that is the way to go because we go to a lot of shows, and I've seen Toto, I've seen Asia, and nice sized theaters. They're packed, absolutely packed, and the merchandise is selling. People are buying $35, $40 T-shirts like crazy. People are drinking at the bar, but people just don't want to buy product. They don't want to buy the music. They don't want to buy the CDs, the albums. But you go to these shows. I mean, I saw Toto and Asia both times. Theaters completely packed, sold out, packed.
I get it. I get it.
That's
kind of what I felt like. This multi-singer thing that I'm doing, because there's a lot of bands that go out and you might be a real deep cut fan of a band and you'll go see that band, but a lot of bands, they may have had 2 or 3 or maybe 4 hits for a whole lifespan of a career, and that's all people know them by.
Sure.
And so by pulling all these different singers together, it's almost like the greatest hits night,
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm having fun doing that right now, and that could change. I don't dispel. I mean, there's a lot of people when that's the only game in town. Some of these smaller, satellite sort of record companies. I started at my own label, and I pushed one solo record, and the same guys that I talked to at radio when I was with the Storm and even 707. And I'd say, well, how come you're not going to add one of my tracks? I had great players. Willie Weeks played bass, Chester Thompson on drums, and all these really fantastic players on my Running with the Wind solo record. And they're like, well, you're not just a singer now, you're a record puke. I had a guy actually call me a record puke, dude.
Puke. That's a different one. I've never heard that.
Oh, you never heard that record?
No, I've heard the record. I never heard that term.
Oh,
record puke, yeah. No, I actually have the record sitting right here.
Got it. There you go. See?
And I have this one that was signed by you.
Oh, is that the Journey?
Yeah.
Flight of Freedom,
Which
right?
has your signature on it.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And I'm even crazy enough to have the Shadows Fade album, which I happen to like.
Yeah. Well, that was one of those deals where, the Frontiers reached out to me and said, look, we have all these songs kind of laying around here that we would like to be able to put on a record. What do you say? You want to do this? Well, the writer that wrote a bunch of those songs, Frederick, I think, or Frederick Berg, I think. Mm-hmm. And they told me, well, these are the demos. And I said, okay, well, so I'm starting to work on this. And meanwhile, they Tom Scholz'd me. They said, yeah, we're working on the record over here. So by the time you get done doing the vocals, we're going to marry it together with the new masters. They never cut anything. They used the same, that's like the demo, and they released it. And I'm like, well, what do I got to say about it? So, I mean, there's some good stuff on there. But it was all the demos of the,
so and that's what we were talking about that before we went on. And Mark said it sounded like demo-ish, like it didn't sound like a real finished. Neither one of us really knew that story.
Yeah. I mean, I was told that it was going to be like, we're going to have so-and-so play the drums. And I'm thinking in my head, that's what I'm singing to. I'm like, okay, this is going to have that big kind of LA record plant drum sound.
Yeah, it ended up being one guy playing everything.
Right, one guy played all the instruments. Yeah,
well, I mean, and he's a good writer, and I kind of wrote my way in on some of the songs. That it was like cut and paste. Here's kind of how the melody goes on the verse, and then the choruses basically was just cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste. So I had to take you go through and you stylize it and stuff. I just, whatever needed to be done, I did it. But then when I actually heard the finished product, I was like, well, this is exactly what they sent me. It was a cheap way to sell records. What are you trying to pound the last nail in my coffin? What are you doing?
I mean, that's, yeah.
So I got to ask you, Kevin, you were talking about it throughout the show tonight. You talked about the Voices of Classic Rock Radio that you've got going on. Is there a place that people can keep up on that and see where you're going to be playing and everything? You have a website?
We have a website, voicesofrockradio.com.
Okay.
And October, I have an Illinois show in Des Plaines, Illinois coming up on the 3rd of October. 4th will be in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and the 5th is in Elkhart, Indiana. And it's different singers.
Okay.
Randall Hall from Leonard Skinner and John Elefante and myself in Des Plaines. And then on the 4th, we add Charlie Hune from Foghat.
Really? I'm a big fan of Charlie's.
Yeah, Charlie's dude. When we met, he came in and did a show that was benefiting my hometown that got hit by, they call it Twin Sisters, 2 hurricanes side by side up my hometown, Streator, Illinois. And we did a fundraiser to help some families that were devastated, dude. I mean, they didn't have the money to rebuild their lives and stuff. So we went in and that was like kind of during the winter. So it was really not good. Charlie came in, Don Barnes came in. I mean, the stories that are just amazing of people coming in and out of my lives, and you build relationships with singers. Don Barnes and I stay in touch. We're sending jokes. We're pretty much politically on the same page. We send quite a bit, I always would kid him and say, hey man, if Donnie ever wants to retire, I'll come in as Lonnie Van's, the black sheep of the family. The family. I always hit him with that. And then I felt terrible when Donnie decided, he was losing his hearing. And Don said, well, he did it to himself, man. The monitors are you couldn't go in front of them monitors unless you were ready to get a haircut.
Oh, really?
Well, then Fran Cosmo is going to come in, and
Really?
Charlie,
Wow.
Fran will be added to the 3 of us on the Elkhart, Indiana show. So that's happening on October 5th. But they're all on the website, and then I'm coming out to do a show in. I'm going to be in Binghamton, New York. Actually coming out to do a cancer benefit called Stock Out Cancer in Binghamton, and I'm going to probably do, I don't know, maybe a little over an hour. And there's another girl who's from Binghamton who was on The Voice, Alyssa. Let me see, Alyssa Crosby. She's going to do the other half of the night, and the Philip Myers band. I've done some corporate work with those guys, but I've done that show maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it was really, really, really good and real fun. And since I accepted that show in Binghamton, I again, like all these musician friends of mine, I pick up the phone. I just did an interview. Promoting one show. He's like, you're doing Binghamton? Yeah. Oh, I'm from Binghamton. I'm like, get out of here. All right. What's the best Italian restaurant? And they told you go around the corner from about a block and a half down this road, blah, blah, blah. So, so I'll be eating good when I'm in Binghamton on the 19th of October.
There you go. All right. Well, anything else, Tom?
I think I've expunged everything.
We had a marathon session here tonight.
Well, if you think of anything else, I get really bored in the middle of December. So let's call me. We'll do December. How's that sound?
Okay.
That'd be great.
That's good. Well, we know we're going to let you get back to Wally Palmer.
Yeah, you got a lot of people looking for you
oh
on the phone.
God.
John Elefante. You got to get back to them.
I came down here to do this, and I was going to, sing a little bit around here and just, warm up for these shows I've coming up. So I'm going to make my phone calls in a hurry and do a little singing and go back home.
Excellent. All right. Well, hey,
Thanks
everybody.
a lot, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Kevin Chalfant, appreciate the talk tonight, Kevin, and best of luck on your upcoming shows. We'll promote them on the website.
All right. God bless you guys, and hope to talk to you again real soon.
Thank you. Kevin. You too.
Thank you for supporting all these musicians. That's so cool of you guys.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care.
Since you've been gone.